Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
this is gonna be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on their global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jarrest, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I am one step closer to being ready for Milano Cortina 2026. This week, I purchased flannel-lined pants.
They are fantastic. I have a pair.
I look like a little mini lumberjack, like a little pocket lumberjack, and they are so soft and comfortable. And I am very excited to try these out at the sliding track. Hopefully we can get to the sliding track. But I am prepared. So now I've got flannel-lined mittens. Though they do have the Canadian flag on them, I don't care because I'll wear it with my Team USA hat. So everyone, and my Team Korea scarf, and everyone will be confused as to who I'm cheering for, and my flannel pants, and I will be ready to go.
Excellent. I have purchased some base layers this week, so that is adding to my stash of stuff to keep warm and toasty. I'm bringing some Beijing cap and the neck warmer thing that they got us, and wrote down on my packing list, pack that seat cushion and
Oh, yes, the seat cushion.
because we're going to be sitting on some stone stuff, perhaps.
Oh,
You
I'm
never
not
know.
looking forward to that stone.
But to get to that stone, we've got to get some more episodes out. And today we are talking biathlon.
It's your favorite day of
So
the year.
excited. It's so exciting because the season has been really good so far. And we are talking biathlon with two seasoned Olympians who are also part of the U.S. Army's world-class athlete program. First up, we have specialist Sean Doherty, who is heading to Milano Cortina for his fourth Olympics. Sean competed in the 2012 Winter Youth Olympic Games. He competed in biathlon and in the mixed youth cross-country biathlon relay, which
A
sounds
lot of
very
words
cool.
for one race.
I know. The U.S. team earned a bronze medal there. He competed at Sochi 2014, Pyeongchang 2018, and Beijing 2022. He has Olympic diplomas for a sixth place men's relay finish at Pyeongchang and seventh place for the mixed relay at Beijing 2022, where he was on a team with our other team Keep the Flame Alive biathlete, Claire Egan.
One of our favorites.
I know. Sean joined the Army in November 2018 as a carpentry and masonry specialist. Milano Cortina will be his second games as part of the Army's world-class athlete program. We talked with him on December 1, which is at the beginning of the 25-26 biathlon season. Since then, he's had some solid results, and the men's relay team has been near the podium several times. Take a listen. Specialist Sean Doherty, thank you so much for joining us. You've been on the biathlon circuit for a long, long time. Things change over time. Experience helps when you're on the circuit. So how does that factor in going into your potentially fourth Olympic year?
Yeah, experience definitely helps a lot in a lot of ways, whether it's managing travel that we have to do just to race in all these different places all winter long. It's kind of knowing the sort of nuances of a venue or a range or a course. That's super helpful. I've been racing here. The first time I came here, I'm in Sweden currently. First time I came here, I was 16. So now I'm 30, and I've seen this course before, which is nice. And then there's also just obviously the physiological benefit with the years of training, and then the same with shooting. I've shot a lot of rounds in my life, and so that just gives you more and more of a base to draw on. I think fortunately, biathlon is not a sport that is not a heavily age selecting sport. You can be successful at 35 or at 18, and that's really cool. And I think that that's a really nice thing about the event.
And now the silver bib exists.
That's right. Was it 33 and up or 35 and up? Susan's legacy, the silver bib.
Biathlon is very European centric. So you've got another season where you're entirely in Europe. How does that work for you, and how does that work for you as being part of the World Class Athlete Program, the WCAP?
Right, just kind of the overview. Like this year, I guess my expected sort of itinerary is I left the U.S. on November 1st, and I would not be going back to the U.S. until like the end of March. The Army WCAP program like supports us through this competition season. So I'm like on orders currently, and I have to build trips and like tell them where I'm going to be and stuff. That is kind of our mission during the competition season, is to represent, our team, country, and the Army as we're overseas competing. I think it's a bit unique in biathlon. Not all sports have like 9 World Cups and a World Championships or Olympics in one concise season, right? Like, so that's also a bit unique. I know other people in other sports, they do a trip for the Pan Am Games and then they go back. Versus we are just kind of, once we go on the road and we are on competing, we're just go, go, go. So
Yeah. I mean, the program is so interesting because it provides a lot of support for being an athlete, but there's also Army duties as well.
yeah, so that's really cool. And I think that's a really unique avenue, pathway for people in the military that like a lot of people don't necessarily know about, or maybe they've heard about, but that it supports like all sorts of high level athletes. And I think that's really unique and also a really great sort of, how do I say this? Like, it's great for us to have for an athlete to have support that's not their national like federation. That you have support that is not entirely wrapped up in like that. The Army support comes from kind of outside of sport, and it's cool that the program can kind of adapt itself and find ways to support athletes who are doing like all sorts of different things, whether they're doing taekwondo, bobsled, biathlon, discus throwing, like hurdles. There's like a lot of different ways that people have found support to pursue elite sports. And I think that's pretty cool. I feel very fortunate to be a member of the program.
Okay, did you ever get the chance during, say, marksman training with people who didn't know who you were and what your sport was to just really show off?
A little bit for sure. I didn't really tell anyone my story like when I went through basic training. I didn't, because, well, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to be treated like extra different, as standing out in the crowd is not really like why you join the Army. So yeah, like I qualified well, and some of my friends were kind of confused at it. And, well, I got a bit of experience here, but an M4 and a biathlon rifle are like not at all the same thing. It's kind of like a scalpel versus a sledgehammer. Like you can do things with both of them, but it's not the same tool.
How do you get used to one versus the other?
Well, the mechanics of tasks repeated for accuracy are kind of all the same at a base level. Like shooting free throws, putting in golf, tennis serving, like shooting, whether you're shooting a bow, shotgun, a rifle at long distance, or a biathlon rifle, there's a lot of commonality. But I do different kinds of shooting to kind of keep it fresh. So, I don't know, picking up a service weapon when I do a qualification with a unit is fun and different, and takes a few rounds to dust off the rust, and then I get the hang of it again.
Okay,
What kind of rifle do you have for biathlon?
Our biathlon rifle is a 22 long rifle made by Antholz in Germany.
Okay. Do you do modifications for it for you?
Yeah, the stock is super customized. Every athlete's stock is quite different and very personalized to them as their individual body, shape, size, shooting style. Because you have a lot of different people, men, women, tall people, short people, whatever. So everyone's stock looks pretty different. They're pretty cool. Some people have cool paint jobs. Some people have fun personal touches, this and that. That's where you see most of the customizing. But the actual rifle itself is pretty much everybody's using it. Basically the same thing.
What do you like about the on-shoots versus other types of biathlon rifles?
Two big things are it has a straight pull bolt system. So instead of a conventional like T bolt, it is just a straightforward straight back to rebolt in between shots. It's designed by a man, Peter Fortner. So it's very fast, it's very smooth, and that's what we all compete with. And second is they make really good barrels that are made specifically with cold weather shooting in mind. Because we test our rifles in a like giant fridge to make sure that they're accurate at cold temperatures. So you need, because most rifles, even a cheap one, will shoot pretty well at normal temperatures, let's say, in the summertime. But when you get down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, there's a big difference. And so our rifles are good at cold weather shooting, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, my mind just got blown. Okay. So let me ask you a little about cold weather shooting then. So is it that the metal changes? Is it the speed of the what changes because of cold weather?
Well, first off, we use ammunition made by Lapua, which has powder specifically and primer that's formulated for cold weather use. So then you have that, like the variance in ammunition. And then, yeah, basically it comes down to like the tolerances of the barrel and how it was manufactured to make sure that it doesn't change at those different temperatures, and that like they use a nitrile coating to like harden the steel a lot more and other stuff like that to make sure that the grouping or the barrel's capacity to produce consistent grouping is maintained as the temperatures drop.
So Beijing and Pyeongchang were Asian cold versus European cold. And did you find that was, I mean, it was just different weather conditions. So did you find the rifle behaving differently in that very dry cold versus more of the snowy, wet cold of Europe?
Yeah, I mean, it's more just about actual air temperature, and Beijing was really cold. Now, I don't notice necessarily like the group change. You would need your rifle, locked into a fixture in kind of a controlled environment to really see those big changes. So it's more that like it's hard for you as the shooter. Like it's hard because there's a real sort of paradox with biathletes and gloves of like you need gloves that are thin enough to feel what you're doing, but also thick enough to keep your hands warm. And it's really hard. It was really hard in Beijing. It was, single digits Fahrenheit and so windy. So it's really, really tough to keep your hands warm. So those are the things that you feel the most. That your like face is freezing, your hands are freezing. It's more of the struggle on the operator to basically be able to do this very precise task in those weather conditions. The rifle is pretty solid. They're pretty reliable. So that wasn't the issue there.
How does snow affect shooting?
Mostly if we're racing in, let's say it's snowing during a race. Yeah, mostly it can get in your sights and in your bolt, like the action of the rifle, and obscure your vision or like kind of jam up things. We do have snow covers on the sights to help keep that out. But if you have a crash or something, or the conditions are there's a lot of snow, it can still get packed in there or whatever. Shooting through the snow is not so bad. We're only shooting at 50 meters, which is not terribly far, and I don't find it too distracting. But sometimes we shoot in the fog, and that's tricky because you have this kind of very washed out picture of the target that you're trying to focus on.
So conditions for Antholz are going to be different because you've got altitude factoring in. So how does altitude play into the shooting, especially?
So again, altitude doesn't affect the rifle or like the kind of mechanical side of it overly much. It affects you a lot. Antholz is 1,640 meters, whatever that is in feet, around just under 6,000 feet. And racing up there is hard. It hurts more. It also makes how you ski up to the point to shoot and makes your recovery and the way you try to sort of calm your system and set yourself up to shoot well, it makes that much more challenging. It's harder to catch your breath. It's harder to bring your heart rate down to, we're not bringing our heart rate down to a resting level, but we are trying to hit the mat a little calmer than we were just skiing. It's hard. Also, a thing that happens a lot, you'll see it if you watch on TV, is that people will start to rush as they get hypoxic. So you'll take the first, second, maybe third shot, and then you'll see people go faster for the last two because your brain is kind of like get me out of here, give me some air. So that's some of the challenges of racing at altitude.
How are you training for that?
We did a lot of altitude training this summer. So I didn't join the team right off the bat, but from July on, we have periods of training at altitude. So through July, and then we come back down, then go back up again. And our preseason camp this year was at altitude. And here we're in Sweden down, but the next two venues will be up at small altitude and then a little higher before Christmas. And most of us will train at altitude over Christmas as well to try to be as acclimated to that as we can be.
What's small altitude? Like, what is considered small altitude?
Well, I'm not a physiologist. We work with the team, the guy on the U.S. Olympic Committee, Randy Wilbur, for a lot of our altitude like training design. But small altitude is going to be, I don't know, from 3 to 4,000, 4,500 feet. And then once you get of that, we consider that significant altitude. We also there's like a limit to how high we can compete, how high our venues can be. So that kind of, around 6,000 feet is kind of our maximum. So that's what we're preparing for in Antholz.
How has the reception of biathlon in the United States especially changed over your career? Or has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a small sport in the U.S., definitely. But there's certainly more people knowing about it, more people having watched it on TV, either at the past games or here and there, and kind of heard of it. And I think having the World Cup in Utah a couple years ago was really fun. We had a lot of people come out and check it out and watch and at least think it's cool and get excited about it. So, yeah, and I would say that like the kind of base of support is definitely growing, and more kids or more clubs kind of popping up, like Aaron's Nordic Center out in Wisconsin or something like that. That another place for people to come across the sport, give it a try, or get interested in it. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a small sport. I don't expect to have 30,000 people show up to watch a World Cup in the U.S., but at the same time, I definitely think it's growing, and there's more people who, at least when I tell them biathlon, they don't ask me if that's like swimming and running. So that's good.
By comparison, what is it like in Europe when you race? Like, what do you expect to see at Antholz?
Antholz is going to be packed. I don't know like ticket sales numbers, but that venue is large, has a high capacity for spectating, and I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me if there were well over 30,000 people watching. That would be pretty standard, I would expect. And some races are even bigger. Ruhpolding is big. Oberhof is huge. When we race in Novo Mesto in the Czech Republic, that's one of our biggest crowds. Massive crowds there. Racing at night is awesome. So I expect a pretty charged atmosphere, and I think that'll be really cool. We definitely did not have that during COVID in Beijing, racing in the edge of the desert at night. So I hope that Antholz will be really, I think it'll be a lot of energy. I think it'll be really cool.
What is the support staff system like? Because I know, I mean, USA Biathlon is still small. You're not got the semis that Norway has or Germany has. So what kind of staff support does the team have?
Yeah, it takes a real crew to get everybody, the athletes prepared and ready on the starting line. We have a couple coaches, and then we have a couple staff who are like physical therapists, PT, massage, all that kind of stuff to help us keep up with injuries and try to recover. And then we have, I don't know how many guys we have here right now off the top of my head, 5 like staff who are working on the preparation of the race skis. And that's a big job. They do a lot of work, and they put a lot of time and effort into like testing the skis, preparing the skis, figuring out how to give us the most competitive set of skis when we start the race. So it's a pretty big group. We got 8 athletes, and then probably another dozen people around to support us, and hopefully set us up to race well and go fast.
The past your 3 Olympics were all in pretty new courses. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, we hadn't raced any of those before.
Right. So this is going to be very different. How do you think that will affect the races and results and how it looks to fans?
Well, I think it's cool for us as athletes to race on courses that we've seen before. You can kind of feel a little more prepared, or you can kind of know what you're getting into versus like in Beijing, no one had raced there before we showed up and it was just brand new course and figure it out. So that's kind of cool. I think as far as results go, I think unpredictability is what makes biathlon fun. And you never really know who will kind of hit it right at the right time during a championship event. Like there's always a few people who just get stars align and they just have a day. Like last year, Campbell, just like bam, he was just the man. So I don't think the course or having seen the venue before is going to really change that aspect of the sport, and I think that's a lot of fun. But it's nice for us to know where we're going, what it's going to look like, what we're preparing for, and not just flying in blind.
How does having natural snow versus man-made snow change how the conditions are for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. The variations in the snow have a big effect on the speed of the skis and the kind of difficulty of the race. Whether it's dry, fresh, soft, natural snow, that's really tough. It's slow because it's abrasive. Those snow crystals are sharp, and it's also softer surface. So as you push, you get less return back from the efforts that you put in. Man-made snow is often older, more transformed, less sharp, and very dirty as far as skis go. So then you have to really work on like having your skis not pick up dirt and slow down during the race. And sometimes man-made snow turns into like a kind of sugary salt, like granular surface that can also be kind of funny to try to ski through at times. We race on artificial snow mostly. It's usually a base of artificial snow with natural snow mixed in. So that's something again that the ski techs are really trying to figure out the best way to squeeze speed out of all these different surfaces. Humidity has a lot to do with how fast conditions are and all these other things. So I don't know. I'm not actually an expert in waxing in snow. I have a decent understanding, but it's not really my job right now. So I'm fortunate that the other guys take care of that for us.
On race day, you get your skis. How much time do you get to warm up usually and figure out if that's a good mix for you?
So now in the IBU and like does not allow the use of fluorocarbons anymore in ski preparation. So that means that skis have to go through testing prior to your start. So you don't see your skis until you pick them up like before the start. You don't ski on them at all before the race. So you warm up on a pair of warm up like training skis and you're doing your zeroing and your preparation. You have plenty of time to do that, whatever you kind of need. But then when you like take your warm ups off, you go to the start, they check you through, you pick up your skis, and that's it. You go. So
Good luck.
yeah,
I hope they're prepped properly.
yeah, they are. The guys do a great job, and they do a ton of work in. But yeah, you have to have a pretty high degree of trust to that those guys or the wax techs are doing their thing, and you just pick them up and go.
What have you noticed in that change away from fluorocarbons? Because it's also happened during your career.
Well, the skis are slower, and the durability is a real challenge without fluoros. Some of these new products are very fast, but don't stay on the ski. So the skis slow down a lot in certain conditions. There's also sometimes because of the kind of shape before when everyone was using fluoros, every team ski preparation was actually a lot of similarity. And now sometimes some teams have a real advantage or they find something that really works in certain conditions or for something that clicks, and you'll sometimes have almost like higher variance in skis throughout a race. But I think it's good. It's especially good for the staff, the ski techs who are working with those compounds all the time, because like for them to just be using fluoros all day, every day through the whole winter is not great. And it's like if we can avoid those guys getting health consequences because of it, it's definitely worth doing. But in certain conditions, especially, there was a bit of a relearning curve for a lot of us, for a lot of teams to like kind of figure out how to prepare skis with new stuff and different compounds that we haven't used before and all this other stuff, and figure out how to get them to work in all these different conditions.
The secret formulas. I mean, I can see the spy novel happening with the wax techs and their secret formulas and what they're doing in the prep, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a real technology race on the ski side because skis make a huge difference. If you have good skis or not good skis, it can be a big impact on your race.
How do skis vary? Not the wax part of it, but when you're looking at what skis to wear and what brand you end up with, how does that impact?
Oh man, this is like an episode of itself, the voodoo science of skis.
No.
So each athlete kind of at this level has their kind of own whatever partnership with a brand. So then you have within that brand, you have their sort of construction, their style of base materials, and the different characteristics of that make up like the camber and flex and all these different sort of ways that the ski responds to your inputs. And then you also have like the grind, which is the pattern cut into the base material, how that interacts with the snow, all those different things, and the whole way that that comes together creates good or bad skis. It's kind of wild. Like most ski companies are actually trying to make their skis all the same, but there's quite a bit of variation in you have ones that are better, even if they're trying to make the same model, the same specifications at all times, just because of variation in the materials and the production and all this other, I don't know, the cycle of the moon, the weather of the day. I don't know. Like you just have skis. Some are better than others. So then that's also where your relationship and the support from the wax staff comes in, as they do a lot of, they help us by also in the summertime testing skis, picking out ones that are good and weeding through the old ones to compare and keep constantly renewing your fleet so that way you have the best stuff that you can.
How many pairs of skis do you travel with?
I don't know, 20 something, between 20 and 30.
How many rifles?
I just have one. The team has a spare rifle if one of us were to have an issue or to have a crash and damage something, but no, just the one rifle.
Do you name your rifle?
Nope, I don't have a name for it. We get on pretty well, but the rifle is like an extension of your body. It's not like a pet.
So you've done a lot of relays. I'm really interested in the difference between when it's a men's relay versus a mixed relay. Is there a difference in how you race when it's mixed versus only men? Does it change your mindset at all?
I wouldn't say it changes the mindset so much. I mean, you're always still just racing against the men in your leg. And I would say that the kind of mindset of a relay is a bit unique, or the environment of a relay is a bit unique, but I wouldn't say that a mixed relay or, men's only relay is overly different. The single mixed relay is a bit different because that's a really unique event and like a very much more of a shooting event, and it's the dynamics of that one are very different. But I don't have any changes in strategy if it's a mixed or a just gender relay.
So what's the difference with an individual race versus a relay in terms of strategy and mindset and all those different pieces that go into it?
Yeah, relays are shorter races, so they're fast, and that's really fun because the pacing for those is a little different. The extra rounds are also a fun addition of they're a small penalty in themselves because it takes 6-7 seconds to shoot an extra round, but at the same time you can afford to be more aggressive and take more risk on the mat with your 5 from the clip because you have those extras in reserve. I mean, the other day in the mixed relay, Maxime hit all 8 of his rounds in like 38 seconds in standing, which is just fantastic. But also, like, you can go for it, and you have a little bit of room to make mistakes, and you can the same on skis because you're skiing a shorter distance, and you might be able to hang in the draft with someone or really challenge someone who is a really strong skier because it's a short distance and you can push and try to keep up, and it's just fun. So I like relays.
How much do you know of where the team is at while you're waiting for your turn?
I guess that kind of depends on the individual. So, I mean, some
Mhm.
guys I used to know would ski with a radio in their jacket when they warm up, and they'd be hearing the whole like live stream. If the warm up track is close enough to the race, you can kind of keep tabs on how things are going, but I'm not keeping that close track of it. I usually see when I go over to the starting pen to get ready for the leg of how things are going, and then you see when you come in to shoot what place you're in.
How does your position in the relay, I mean, if you're second or if you're third or you're fourth or you're first, like how do you approach each position?
Yeah, the first leg is definitely a bit unique because you're racing in like really well. You're responsible for getting the team off to a good start, and you're racing in a big group, which is can be fun. Like skiing in close quarters, you have to be pretty quick and efficient shooting there in order to make sure you keep contact with that lead group. And then through the middle of the race, I would say like legs 2 and 3, the unique thing about that is that there's like, especially we're assuming a race is going pretty well, you get tagged and there's no like building into it. You just get tagged with a couple other guys and it's just full throttle from zero, just like right out the gate, which is fun. Usually you're flying along, hopefully with a group of a few other skiers, and the race becomes much smaller at that point because you're only really racing the people in your vicinity, unless it becomes like a small sort of head-to-head competition in that, which is fun. And then if you're racing the anchor leg, I mean, it can be a tremendous amount of pressure to close out the relay and seal the deal on those. And so you got to stay calm, got to stay in your groove on the range and just hit your targets and give it all you got to bring the team home. But I've raced all the different legs of the relay, and each one has its unique character or on a given day and stuff like that. So it's fun. I like going first in a way because it's like really action packed, but any job is fine.
Is there chatter among the racers?
Not really. We're mostly out of breath.
When you're done shooting, do you notice if people have had to go into the penalty loop at all? And do you register that or are you just focused on what you're doing?
Yeah, you might take a glance at what the people around you are doing a little bit, but that's kind of a classic mistake to make if while you're actually shooting is to like start noticing what other people are shooting while you're supposed to be shooting and then you get distracted. That's a classic one. But yeah, if you see someone like especially leaving the stadium, like going into the penalty loop, that usually puts a little motivation for you that you're gonna pass them. But usually you'll get that information from a staff member out on the course or something like that.
Do you prefer a spot versus another, or it's just I have to shoot wherever I'm put?
Oh, you mean different mats, different points?
Different mats, yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of depends on the format of the race. Like in a relay, you have to file in. So if you're in sixth place in the relay, you are shooting on point 6. That you don't have a choice there. In a sprint format race, it's 1 through 15 is set to prone, and 15 to 30 is set, or 16 to 30 is set to standing, and you can choose wherever you want to go. That depends a little bit. One on where you zeroed. Like generally, you're going to stay around the points that you zeroed because the wind and the conditions on the range would be most similar there. And then in standing, you can go where you prefer to go. Usually, people go more towards 16, 17, 18 because it gives you a little more time to ski up to the target or ski up to the mat and get a couple extra breaths in and kind of glide up to the mat there. But I don't have like a strong attachment. It's not like I'm always trying to shoot on lucky number 7 or something.
Where you zeroed?
Yeah, usually in an individual race, you're shooting around where you zeroed. So
Okay,
if
so
you
what does that
zeroed
mean?
before the competition, we have a set amount of time to shoot on paper targets, to sight in the rifles, get a feel for the conditions of the day, make sure we're good to go. And so you zero based on your nation's overall rank. And so you zero, like in the relay day, we zeroed on our bib number at 12. And so we're kind of in the middle of the range, which is good. And then, yeah, if that was a sprint race, I would have shot somewhere around there. I would have shot between 10 and 13, basically.
Wind can be a huge factor in shooting. So, how much are you noticing the wind changes, especially if it's a windy day or the wind is whipping around and changing directions, sometimes mid shoot for athletes? How
Yeah,
do you figure that out?
handling the wind is challenging. That's one where experience really comes in. One, you have more experience of dealing with wind in general as a shooter, and two, you have more experience with like kind of the way the wind behaves on a given range, because each range has its own sort of feel to it with wind. And so that's one where you try to gain as much information as you can during the zeroing period. And then, I zero generally for like the average of the day. And then you have a plan to react, to adjust the sights accordingly as you need. But you have little wind flags, little red flags all throughout this whole range to give you some feedback of like what the air is doing. And then it's just to read and react the best you can. And yeah, if the wind changes during your shooting stage, that can be really tough. Some people will stop and adjust the sights. Some people will just kind of shade, we would call it, military term of Kentucky windage, where you kind of just push your shots off to one side or the other to try to kind of adapt to the wind of the moment. But that's another one where like you're shooting, for time as well, and you don't want to slow down too much and start trying to read the wind. It's kind of just to make a decision and go. I rarely would click during a stage or adjust my sights. Sometimes I would just try to maybe adjust my aim to compensate if it was that short notice of a change. But that can be really tricky, especially in stadiums like Oberhof, where you have some really weird air movement patterns. You got to be really ready to make some adaptations on the fly, or you got to just be really confident and go for it.
What is the range at Antholz like?
It's not generally super windy there, but you can get like little sort of squalls and like mountain snowstorms that come blowing through that can really be quite dramatic. Generally, you have like thermal wind in Antholz, the way the air heats up and moves through the valley or cools and settles down through the valley throughout the day, kind of creates like the movement in the air mass that we have to adjust the sights for. But it's not terribly windy of a place. At least I hope not.
Okay, thermal wind, new term. I love this.
When you're skiing on the course, do you hear what your coaches are saying to you as they run down as well?
Yeah, sometimes, unless the crowd's really loud, you can usually hear them pretty good. Most of the time, they're just cheering you on, maybe giving you a split time or like especially in a 4-stage race, like an individual coming up, they're going to give you a target board that shows you your shooting from the previous stage so you can adjust if needed.
How do you take all of that in while you are also pushing your body to the max? Is that just training that comes into play?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just training, but it's not. Sometimes it is kind of tricky to remember if a coach said 2 right or 2 left or whatever. But generally speaking, they're not really giving you that much information. And it's not like every coach or staff member on the track is giving you information. A lot of them are just cheering. And then, 1, maybe 2 coaches would give you information that you need. But we're trying to keep it pretty simple and not like, you're not trying to overthink it while you're out there skiing. So it's not too much to remember. We're not doing math in our heads out there while we're racing.
Hypoxia would not mess
Yeah,
with math very well.
no, definitely not.
What does a successful season look like when it's an Olympic season for you this year?
I mean, I think the first and biggest part of a successful season is just staying healthy, because you can't race well or even anywhere near your capacity to race well if you're not healthy. And all of us over the years, when you do this long enough, has struggled with illness or injury or something like that. And then, I mean, the big goal would be, I'm not yet qualified for that Olympic team, so it would be to qualify for that team and then just be in a position to give it all I got in February, because you never really know what the outcome is going to be. It's not like you can say, I want a PR time of X or things like that. But my goal would be to be in a position where I could just race to the fullest of my ability, and wherever that falls is where it falls. There's a lot of really, really talented people out here, and any given day, you don't really know where your best will stack up, but on a day where you feel that you produced an effort and a performance that is complete and in one of your better ones, then at least you can be happy with that.
You've had a long Olympic career. What did you learn from the people ahead of you? Because you raced with Lowell Bailey, who was just a force on the team, and Susan Dunkley and Claire Egan, who were forces on the team for the women. What did you learn from them? And also, as you kind of are in one of those senior level stages to be able to mentor the new people.
Yeah, I mean, definitely as a young guy, you could see how, especially in like 2018, how like Tim, Lowell, and Susan and Claire dealt with the pressure and the expectation and the kind of unique sort of storm of media and other stuff that comes up around an Olympics that's a bit unique. And I think those are probably some of my biggest takeaways or from them is like how they manage stuff outside of actually competing, because that's a lot of the challenge on an Olympic year is in also just seeing them prepare and train. And I learned a lot from training with those individuals and racing with them all throughout the years that would then prepare you to also a classic thing that happens is at a big event is that people feel like they need to do something different or something special or pull some magic out. And you watch the people that are successful at those times and, they just keep even and they just set themselves up the best they can and then go out there and, actually just try to do their normal good work. And then all of a sudden, like in Antholz 2020, right? Susan Silver in the sprint.
I think so.
And so that was one of those races where like, man, in the training camp before, Susan was the same Susan that she'd always been, but then all of a sudden she just put one together and had a hell of a day. And that kind of example is when you see someone do that you trained with so much, then to believe in your preparation, in your process, and then just go out there and do it.
Do you have a favorite race format?
Yeah, I mean, each race has its own sort of characteristic that I really enjoy. I really like mass start racing, like relays, pursuits, and mass starts, just because of the head-to-head element. I think those are really cool. But also, I think the individual has a cool place as a shooting race, and I think relays are really cool. And if I was to pick my favorite races, they would be like pursuits and mass starts of like the ones that I look forward to the most.
Excellent. Well, Sean, thank you so much for spending time with us while you're on race week. We really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, fun talking shop. Thanks for the good questions.
Thank you so much, Sean. Next up, we're talking with Staff Sergeant Deedra Irwin. As a winter athlete, Deedra got her start in cross country and at age 25 was planning to retire when she discovered biathlon. She joined the U.S. Army's World Class Athlete Program as a human resource specialist and subsequently made her first Olympic team in 2022. While the U.S. has never medaled in biathlon at the Olympics, Deedra has had the best individual finish by an American at any Olympics, placing 7th in the women's 15K individual race at Beijing 2022, and that was a pretty spectacular day for the U.S. We talked with Deedra on December 9th, which was after the opening week of competition for the 2025-26 season. She had a really tough weekend, that first race weekend, and her first race was really difficult in the first round of shooting. She missed 4 rounds and couldn't figure out where they were going. So if you went back and watched this, usually the biathletes are just heads in the gun and in the sights and looking and shooting and getting out of the range. But Deedra actually looked around to try to figure out where her bullets were going. And it was really tough to see when that happens. However, she has been on an upward trajectory since then and has been getting some prize money while she's at it. And you know how I love when athletes make some coin, especially in the smaller sports. Take a listen to our conversation with Deedra. Staff Sergeant Deedra Irwin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As we are talking, week 1 of the biathlon season just finished. Long season. Race weekends vary in terms of the number of races. So how do you plan out your season in terms of summer training and fitness goals and trying to peak at the right times?
That is such a hard question. And I think if everybody knew that answer, everyone would be doing well all the time. I've seen some athletes literally peak every 4 years just for the Olympics. I've seen some people peak the year before the Olympics. And, they think that going into the next season, if they do all the same stuff, it'll happen again. And it doesn't. And so I think for me, I've had kind of this like every other season, I have really good results, and depending on my health and sickness and everything. And so I think that actually plays more role into it than our actual fitness and training. A lot of us do all the same stuff, and we're putting in all the same work, but it really comes down to who can stay the healthiest at the right time, who can, have the right nutrition, like not sustain a weird injury. I've had like 3 crashes this year that have taken me out of races, or training for a little while. So I think that's the game, There's no perfect formula of how do we peak for an event. It really just comes down to like every little thing we do all the time.
How do you deal with the frustration of you train so hard, and then you have a crash or something funky happens, you catch a cold, and that must be so wearing on you.
It is. I would be lying if I said that this sport, the entire career of my sports, this is like my 3rd or 4th sport I've done now, that it hasn't just like brought me to tears and wondering why I'm doing it and how do I keep going and should I move on, or is it time to be done, or is this the injury that's finally going to like cause the end, or is this the frustration that I'm not going to mentally be able to come back from this time. And so it's a very difficult thing. And I think one thing that's really helped me is I have an incredible support system. My family, my fiance, my friends, they all like look at me as if like I've already won an Olympic medal all the time. So it's really easy to just be able to take it one day at a time and just keep kind of going through the motions until all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm back to normal again. I can move my leg again. It doesn't hurt anymore. Everything's healed up. Whatever shoulder injury I've had, even with a cold. I woke up with a sore throat yesterday morning and I was like, all right, I hope it's not a cold. You just kind of sit there and you just kind of take it day by day, hour by hour, training session by training session, until all of a sudden all the bad stuff is gone and you're like, oh, I feel good again. I'm ready to race. I'm mentally here. And so I think it's just continuing to move forward while you still have that motivation, while you still have that, support. And so that's one thing that's really helped me through, gosh, I mean, I could tell you probably about 50 different ways I thought I was going to quit since I started taking sports super seriously when I was in like, I don't know, 8th grade, So, but I think that's what makes a lot of Olympians and a lot of people who have continued doing sports for so long in their life, that makes them so unique, because we've all been hit with about 50 different ways to fail. And we've been handed 50 different ways to give up. And we are still here, and we're still trying, and we're still pushing, and we're still motivated by the fans. We're still motivated by just pushing ourselves to the limit and beyond everything we can imagine ourselves to be able to experience at the time.
I have about 20 questions off of that. But do you allow yourself to wallow after a bad race?
I do. I actually...
I mean, we can just put it out there. Like, the individual this past week was tough. Bad wins, and then you zeroed, but like even Chad Salmela said on the counter, he's like, she doesn't know where her bullets are going. Like, what? I mean, that's just wacky, and that's biathlon.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and I mean, that was one where, I took the clicks into the wind, and I was still not hitting, and I was just like, I mean, people, if they watch the replay on the mat, the Norwegian media asked me after, they're like, which swear words were you using? And I'm like, don't... I was like, I was like, I think you guys know all our American swear words.
Definitely cannot swear in Norwegian, apparently, in biathlon.
Yeah, exactly. I know you get fined for that. I told them that. I was like, you trying to get me fined on Norwegian media? Like, no. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you just don't know. And I was sitting there, and I had taken 4 clicks into the wind, which, if a lot of people don't know that, it really moves the bullet about 2 centimeters. Our target's only 4 centimeters big. So it's like, I took quite a few clicks into the wind. And when my coach showed me my board after that bout and was like, you need 5 more, I was like, that was a 9-click wind. That means like out of this little target that's like about the size of a golf ball, I needed to move like 3/4 of a golf ball. That's how strong the wind was. Like, no, my brain was just like after that. And you could tell by the end of the race, I finally got back into my rhythm and I was able to shoot well again. But having such a bad shooting stage, just opening up like that, it was really mentally tough. And yeah, after the race, I definitely was just like wallowed in that, but I could find the good stuff from that race. There was good stuff that happened in that race. So like I skied the top ski time out of my teammates, even with a crash, because I also crashed during the race and right, bruised my leg really bad. And so and I was able to come back and shoot my last standing stage clean in under 30 seconds in the wind, which is huge. So, I mean, there were definitely some positives to pull out of that race that I was really happy about. But I usually tell myself, I'll give myself like 5 minutes. If I need to like cry, punch, scream, be angry, I'll give myself 5 minutes. And then you got to just like move on to the next thing. And so I tell a lot of my teammates too, where I'm like, if you dwell on it too long, you're going to just really like spiral yourself into this hole where you're going to start wondering like what you did wrong. And most of the time, especially in biathlon, we didn't do anything wrong. We just didn't execute the way we know how we can execute. We've all been through a training where we've hit 80 out of 80 shots for the day and we're like feeling on top of the world. And we know we can do that in a race, but executing that under all that pressure, with all the elements, with everything going on, it's not an easy task. And so you have to be forgiving about those 1 or 2 misses, or for me, just knowing that like that was so out of my control. I was zeroed. The group they showed me, I mean, all 5 of my bullets were like really small, tight group. I wasn't shooting poorly. It just wasn't my day with the wind. So it's one of those things where like you got to definitely understand where you made your mistakes, or like definitely reflect on how your body felt that day. If you had a bad race and you're just like, I don't know where that came from. Like, maybe your energy's off. Maybe you didn't eat the right food. Maybe you didn't sleep well. So like, there's definitely a point to the wallowing. You got to like really use that to dissect what happened, but you can't use it to like pull yourself down. You got to dissect it, learn from it, and then try to bring yourself up into the next race. Because like you said, our season's really long. We have a ton more races going on, including all the Olympic races, which are even higher pressure. So it's going to be, and it always is, a really long season where you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you also hopefully you'll clean a few races and get some really good results.
On the flip side, when you do well, how long do you enjoy that victory, the personal victory, before you have to do you have to turn it off in order to focus on the next race?
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely.
you know what I mean? It's like the opposite of
Yeah.
wallowing, but
Yeah.
can that lead to overconfidence, which could lead to mistakes? Or no, not necessarily.
I think it's yes and no. I think for some athletes, like definitely depending, it could make them a little more risky, maybe with the shooting part or something like that. Like in the mixed relay, I mean, I still brag about it. I was like, my 23-second clean prone, I felt sexy getting off the mat. I mean, I was just like, girl, that was good. But then, of course, I followed it up with 4 misses in the individual in 50 seconds. So, it's like very humbling. So it's like, I can still look back at that shooting stage in the relay, knowing like I can do that. I felt really good doing that. I remember how it felt to perform that way, and definitely love and enjoy that moment. But also I got humbled real quick 2 days later. And so it's definitely, especially for our sport, there's this level of, you can definitely gain confidence from your good results and you can build and build and build on those. But there might be a day where it comes up and all of a sudden you're the one missing all the targets, or you're just bonking in a race, or whatever's happening. And so I think you definitely want to celebrate the good races for sure. But I think, what was it? I remember distinctly, man, it was a couple years ago now, where I got my first 8th place. I got like my first top 10, I think my only top 10 on the World Cup, because I cleaned a sprint. And of course, after the sprint, next day is the pursuit. And so I'm sitting there like starting bib 8, nervous, totally nervous, barely slept that night because I was like so excited, but also nervous. And I just went into that day being like, I got this, but I think I kind of maybe had a little bit of imposter syndrome, where I was like, I'm normally not up this high. I'm used to like crawling my way back up from like bib 30 or something. And so I definitely like that first shooting stage in that race, I think I missed 2. And then I cleaned the rest of the race and did fine. But I think that first stage, I almost had to like get that out of my system and be like, oh, okay, I'm not unstoppable. I am like, I do have to fight. I have to like turn that on. Like, maybe don't think I belong here yet, but like, I will work to belong here, you know? And so I think there's all of that learning that you take from all of the really, really high highs and also the really low lows that, you know, the people who can meet in the middle are the ones who end up being able to perform the best and the most consistent, because our sport is honestly about consistency. You know, you can win a World Cup one day and then you can be at the bottom the next.
With that sexy shooting, you got a payday, which is always exciting, I think.
Yes,
for me.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, especially for a lot of the US athletes, we're all like, we don't get paid on a regular basis. So anytime we can sneak into the prize money, it's a super cool feeling. I mean, I remember telling myself, because I think that was my teammate Chloe Levins. It was her first time making money on the World Cup in that relay. And so I heard somebody was chasing me down. I think it was Hannah Oberg. And I was just like skiing my butt off because I didn't really know what place I was in, but I knew we needed a top 8. And I was just like, do it for Chloe. She needs a payday, you know? Like, I'm like lucky enough that I get paid by the Army, but like I am sensitive to the fact that a lot of my teammates, they are doing this like out of, you know, just the love of the sport, and they don't get paid to be here. And they're constantly having to pay for, you know, the breaks between World Cups, where they're going to stay for Christmas. And it is not cheap to stay over in Europe during Christmas, especially where there's snow, where everybody wants to be. So I definitely think like, yeah, anytime we get a payday is super amazing. And especially as a team, it's really cool when we get to do it as a relay, because anytime top eight in the world, that just sounds cool to say. Come on.
And Hannah Oberg chasing you down is no joke.
No joke. It was so funny because I think I was just so out of it. It's the first weekend of racing and someone was screaming at me, Hannah's coming. And I literally was like, who's Hannah? Like, I had no idea until like halfway through the loop that like I finally had processed. I was like, Hannah Oberg's coming for me? Oh my gosh. Like, I better get moving because she is a powerhouse. I think she just set the record this past week for like biggest move in a pursuit ever on the World Cup. Did you see that? She moved 50 places. She started bib 59 and got all the way up to 9th place. Like, who does that? And she didn't clean either. Like, she missed 2. And so I was just like, oh, like she's fit. And I think, yeah, I think I saw it on the Biathlon World. They were like, a new record has been set for pursuit movement, 50 places. Crazy, insane. She's a beast. Love her. Biathlon is a crazy sport.
There are a lot of insane people on biathlon. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
but that's what makes it fun too, is because there's so many athletes that you can follow and get excited about.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was excited to watch the sprint and pursuit this past weekend. Sadly, I didn't get to race them, but I was cheering on the sideline, watching Lisa Teresa Hauser win it in the last stage. I mean, biathlon is so exciting. Being able to be a fan for the weekend was just like so fun to be able to like be excited and watching my teammates, and not even my teammates, just watching biathlon in general. I'm like, this is the coolest sport ever. And I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but it's the coolest sport ever.
Antholz, classic World Cup venue, and also Olympics venue this year. Very high altitude. How do you train for altitude, first off? And then where on the course can you get advantages?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of places we can train for altitude. We trained in Antholz this summer to get some altitude training. We also trained in Livigno, Italy, which is higher than Antholz. I believe before the Olympics, we're going to have a camp in Ridnow, Italy, which is, I think, either the same height or slightly higher than Antholz. It's like an IBU Cup racing venue. But yeah, we're at like middle altitude right now in Hochfilzen. So we use some of the race venues, obviously, to train up and race at altitude. But then we will definitely do like oh my gosh, the word is so hard, an whatever that word is. It's late here, to get used to the altitude before the Olympics. So we'll spend, I think, about 3 weeks. If I'm right, I think we're actually sitting out one of the World Cups in second trimester to gain more altitude exposure. And I think a lot of the teams will do that because Antholz is at altitude. And I think for me, I race really well at altitude. I don't know if it's because I trained in Sun Valley for 2 seasons or 3 summers when I was racing, Nordic skiing. So I think I kind of figured out how to race at altitude, which is definitely more of you can't be so quick. You can't use all your oxygen all at once. You have to be a little more powerful and have a little bit more finesse and endurance to your, I guess, form and your racing pacing style. And so I think there's a lot we can gain in Antholz with the training at altitude. And then a lot of us have experience racing at altitude. And it's also, we have a lot of experience at Antholz in general. Because it's a World Cup venue, a lot of us already know the course. They've only made like a couple changes here and there throughout the past couple years. Yeah, so I think there's a lot to gain on the course, but obviously like it's all going to come down to the range and who can shoot the best at altitude. So that's the big one, is people, being able to shoot with like the oxygen deprivation, the ones who are a little more comfortable taking an extra breath between shots, or shutting down a little bit more into the range and taking their time setting up so that they have enough oxygen and they can get their heart rate under control before they actually start pulling the trigger. So I think that's kind of make the biggest difference. And I think you see it a lot when you're at altitude, and we have races at altitude, is the shooting gets crazy.
You've got races at different lengths. Does the physical course change, or is it just like the number of loops? So I know in sprint, it's just cutting the race in half basically, but do some of the other distances change where you go into the trails?
Yeah, so for a sprint, we'll do a 2.5 kilometer loop. And so that's kind of our basic loop at most of these venues. For the individual, we will add half a K somewhere on the loop. It's usually we go out and do an extra little finger somewhere to do a 3K loop. And then in what would be the pursuit and the relays, when we're doing 2 kilometer loops, they usually find some sort of cutoff to cut off a certain half a kilometer from our course. And so the same with the men will do a 3.3K course. And then for the individual, they'll do a 4K course. So they like really go out there. Very rarely, unless we have low snow, do we end up just like doing double loops or something like that, which on the World Cup, I haven't had to do much. Maybe only like once in the past 3 years did we have like such a low snow that only like 2K was open. So like, I think for the men, they had them do like, you have to do 2 loops and then you get to shoot, and then you do a loop and shoot. So it's like trying to add the kilometers either before or at the end of the race, but very rarely does that happen.
Speaking of the men having a different race length, we on the podcast have talked a fair amount about gender equality, and on the Summer Olympic side, they talk about it a lot, but they tone that down because women still can't do Nordic combined for the Winter Olympics. So there's, you get that. But biathlon is interesting because you have the equal number of races and you have equal pay for the prize payout, but the men and the women race different lengths. How is that perceived within the biathlon community?
Yeah, I think we're fine with it. I think a lot of it comes down to like, in my mind, like the difference between men and women is obvious to me. Like men can handle a bigger load. If I started racing, like what do they do? 10K, that pretty much is a 10K sprint. And then on top of that, a 20K, like it would take a different training than what we're used to. And so I think the big thing is we spend about the same amount of time doing the same things. So like our sprint takes about 25 minutes, their sprint takes about 25 minutes. So when you actually look at like how much time we spend doing it, and so that goes down to like TV ratings too, because like the IBU has to, everybody's got to pay to advertise and everything like that. So I think when everybody's looking at biathlon as a whole from the outside, we get our prize money from TV viewings. We race for the same amount of time. In a lot of our minds, we are treated equally, even though we're skiing less of a distance. But in my mind and my background with like sports science and exercise science, like the biology is different. I don't want to be racing as much as the men because I don't think my body can handle that. And if I wanted to race that, I would have to put in way more training to be able to achieve good results with how much more taxing that is on my body. Where I think like the men can obviously handle those distances. They have testosterone, they have all of the extra bone density or whatever, you really want to throw at it. And so to me, and I think I can't speak for the entire biathlon community because I bet there's some some women and some men out there who do want us to race equal distance. But even when I look at how the Nordic circuit has done it, I think it's really cool that they're racing the same distance. But I do see a lot of women sitting out more races now because it's so exhausting. And so it's a lot to race all of those distances for the entire season, because we have like 30 races a season. And so if you add on, an extra 5 to 10 kilometers a week for the women, it's like you could see more injuries, you could see more fatigue, you could see more people strategically sitting out races to try and survive the whole season. And so maybe in the future, people will want to do it. But I think right now, like, we have equal TV time, we have equal representation on the start line, we have equal pay. I feel like the IBU is far ahead of most other organizations in treating the men and the women very, very equally.
No, it's interesting because it's easy to sit on the couch and look at the distances and the numbers and just not know in the background what that means. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, for me, definitely, I think it comes down to just like body fatigue. I think if we want women to continue in the sport for longer, putting them through much more of a load, I think it'd be difficult. And they're doing it though on the Nordic circuit, and they're doing it super well. So I think that, only time will tell if that's actually going to be, the way we all move forward in all the sports.
No, that's interesting, but they're also not skiing around with a gun on their back.
That's true. We got to carry an extra like 7.5 to 8 pounds, and that is also very fatiguing. I mean, there's some days where, if I want to save my energy a little bit, instead of doing my pre-race with my rifle on my back, I will leave it on the rack and just pick it up to shoot, just to kind of not fatigue my body as much. So it's definitely all like comes down to an energy balance and that kind of thing. Like if they told me I had to race a 10K for a sprint, I would totally do it and I could train for it, but it would probably take me a couple years until I could do it well.
Speaking of having a gun on your back, because a lot of athletes do get back injuries, I would assume the gun helps be part of that. The gun is part of that in a way. But like, where does the weight sit? And when you fling that gun back on your shoulders after a shooting stage, what does that feel like?
Wow. Great questions. So we actually, US Biathlon tried to figure out the best way to have our rifles on our back. And we did this with I think everybody knows by now, we've partnered with Montana State University Biomechanics Department. They do a bunch of stuff with us, from weight sensors or pressure sensors in our boots to, videos on the treadmill of like our little skeletons moving around and doing all of the different things. One thing they also did was measure, I guess, like the angle and where the weight should be on our backs. And what we realized is that we should have our rifles sitting as high up as possible on the harness. So you can adjust the harness height. So as long as there's no like impeding of the butt plate, it's not hitting you or stabbing you in the back, you should have as high as possible. And then there's that little, you guys kind of see the little metal part from the harness part that sticks onto the rifle. So we try to like maximize the rifle being up top, I guess, instead of sitting low. And so that way the rifle's not pulling you back, because when you want a more efficient technique for skiing, you want to be kind of forward and have your center of mass forward over your toes. Your hips are supposed to be up. And so having the rifle actually higher on your back helps you bring everything forward. And so a lot of the pressure that's sitting on us, it's sitting like pretty much right in the, like underneath our neck is where the weight is, kind of where that little harness kind of connects to the rifle. Obviously, everybody takes off their rifles different ways and puts them on different ways, depending on how they like to set up or get up. But I think at this point, the rifles kind of just become part of our skiing so much that like putting it on our back, like in the middle of the race, I don't really feel it anymore. Like it doesn't feel like as I'm throwing it back on, I feel this like weight coming onto me. It's just sort of like, it just becomes a part of you. And so obviously if anything's off, like if the harness is a little shaky or your bungees, it's because it's like pretty much a bungee cord that holds it onto our bodies. If those are a little loose, you can definitely feel the rifle flopping around, and you'll see that if people have accidentally broken their harness in the race or something. But for the most part, I think we've done the science to try and figure out if it should sit high, low, or middle. We've decided higher is better. And when you think about how much 8 pounds actually is, it's not a ton. So like the immediate feeling of putting on your back isn't like you feel weighted down. It's more of like the fatigue that comes towards the end of the race. You might be able to feel it and see it in your technique.
Do you have a name for your rifle?
I don't. And I thought after like, what have I been in this 8 years now, that like a name would have like manifested itself. Cause like, I definitely don't just like buy a car and name it. My car has to earn its name, like most of the things that we treat as our lovely inanimate objects, they have to earn their name. And it's not that she hasn't earned it, but like it hasn't like popped out to me in any way yet. So like, I know she's a she, she's a strong she. So I know that bit, but yeah, she hasn't gotten really a name yet. I'm trying to think like, no, I haven't thought about that for a couple of years. Cause it definitely was like the first 4 years I was like, okay, it's going to happen. Some sort of name's going to come up in my mind and it's going to be it. And it just still hasn't happened. So if anything, like, yeah, I mean, every once in a while we talk about our babies, like they're expensive little babies, So like I got my little baby over there. I got to clean her actually. Got to bathe her, once a week.
Speaking of expensive, they are expensive, but they are really fun to shoot. How much are we talking? And what kind of gun do you have?
So luckily, when I first decided to do biathlon, I had an incredibly generous donor give me the rifle that I race with. And so I'm so ever grateful to them because before I started biathlon, I was pretty much homeless, living with friends out in, Idaho that had taken me into their home. And so I definitely didn't have like what is, I think now about $4,000 to drop on a rifle. Like, I could barely like pay for gas to like get to work every day. So I was very lucky to get someone who donated the rifle to me. But since then I have invested probably another $4,000 into the rifle. Because obviously I got it as like just an on-shoot stock. So I have an on-shoot sprint barrel, which is what most people race with these days. It's a company out of Germany, Fortner on-shoots. It's probably the best biathlon rifle you can get. And it just came with their stock, which is like the wooden or, a lot of people have like a carbon fiber now. And so it just came with that. And so I ended up getting this like beautiful French stock made out of this really light, I think it's called like palm wood or something like that. I really wanted a wooden one because I wanted to be able to like manipulate it and work it how I wanted to. But I think actually the year before the Olympics, I like broke my first stock lunging to a finish in the Czech Republic for our like best women's relay back when we had Claire and Susan. We got like a 5th place, lunged, fell on the stock, snapped it. So sad. But that happens in our sport because, you just fall on your rifle, it's going to break. So I ended up buying a new one, very similar to the old one with the same company. But since then, I've had so many modifications put onto it. I have parts from 3D Athletics, which is an awesome brand out of France, which 3D prints, like hand molded, like he custom built all of the pieces for me to fit my hands specifically how I wanted it to. And then there's also Lost Nation, which is the company based out of Craftsbury, Vermont, from the Ethan Drezigacker. He's like our person in the United States who does most of our gunsmithing and building of our stuff because it's such a unique sport. And so I also have a lot of parts from him. So it's like our rifles and our stocks kind of end up becoming just like Frankenstocks after many years. There's nothing that's really like not customizable, especially if you have a wooden stock. People have stuff shaved, or a lot of people have like repaint theirs every year and they get custom like magazine toppers. And we have different ways we can install the sights. There's different levels we can put it on. Like sight risers is what they're called. We all have different types of triggers depending on what type of trigger we like. Like I think I actually have like a BB rifle trigger on mine or something like that. I don't actually know where it came from, but I saw it, I liked it, and I shoot well with it. So it just became my trigger. But I've tried like 6 different triggers. I've tried like 6 different bolt throws, which is the little piece, just that little piece to like pull the bolt back and reload the ammo. So there's so many different tiny pieces on our rifle that we can customize that eventually add up to a lot of money. So my rifle, if I sold it as is probably worth about $5,000 right now. But then used, I would knock off a couple thousand. You know, if I was selling it to a kid or something, I'd be like, this stock's been used, you know, she's been beat up a little bit.
You're part of the world class athlete program. How does your Army training separate you from or set you apart from other US biathletes? And maybe because there are a lot of biathletes on the circuit who are also in the Army, correct?
Yes. Just on our team alone, Maxime Germain, he joined the Vermont National Guard about a year or so after me. Specialist Doherty, Sean Doherty, he joined, I think, like a week, the same week as me or something like that. And then Sergeant Cervenka, he joined about the same week as me. So we all kind of joined around the same time. And so we are currently representing the U.S. Army and Vermont National Guard over here in Europe this season. But yeah, I mean, Lisa Theresa Hauser is part of the Austrian military. Simon Eder is part of the Austrian military. I think like Michaela Carrera, might be wrong. Some of the Italians are definitely part of the Carbonari. It sounds like a pasta dish, but it's actually their police unit. But yeah, there's a lot. There's like the Finnish military. I know a couple of the athletes from the Finnish team. Definitely the German team. There's a handful of them. So a lot of the biathletes are like in the international circuit and in the development circuit on the IBU Cup are part of some sort of government, police, or military program. And I think it helps in so many ways to have that extra, it's almost like club level support, how we look at it in the US. So you have people who are part of Craftsbury, you have people who are part of Team Berkey, or I'm trying to think of some of the other clubs, Soho and Bozeman, they all have different clubs. And so the US Army team is kind of just this other club where we get a lot of support and funding from the US Army. But obviously we're soldiers and we're soldier athletes. And so we all also have jobs and careers outside of biathlon. So I'm a human resource specialist, and I think it's a pretty unique way to feel like you have a career outside of this one passion. You know, I call this like my passion career. Biathlon, I think, can be a full-time job for some people, but it's definitely like a passion to put yourself through what we put ourselves through year in and year out, and all the training and all the racing and everything. And so if I could do it forever, I would. But, you know, eventually I'm going to have to like move on to another career. And I think, you know, being able to have the US Army support that and know that, you know, I have an option when I'm done to continue on with my career as a soldier is a really unique opportunity that we have as world-class athlete program soldier athletes. And so there's so many things I think I've also learned from the Army, just like going to basic training when I was like 26 years old is like not, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend going to basic training in your 20s. It was tough. It's tough being in a situation where you think you're independent and all of a sudden you're being told what to do all the time, and you have to completely retrain your brain and your body to like work as a team and not just be independent, you know. And I think especially as me as a female athlete growing up the entire time, I was like totally thought I knew how to do everything the right way, and then being told that like didn't matter, I still had to do it their way. You know, I definitely learned how to just like work in an uncomfortable situation. Like a lot of times we're like out in the forest and they're just like, okay, complete this task, you know, and it's like, you're already cold, you're already dirty, you're uncomfortable. And so you learn this really unique, like resiliency and the ability to work on a team and as a team to achieve a common goal. And so I think the US Army brings so much and has taught me so much. It's brought so much to my like mind as an athlete and has helped me grow in that kind of resiliency, like we were talking about earlier. Like, how do you deal with, you know, the losses? How do you deal with the failures? How do you deal with the success? How do you find that? And I think I learned a lot of that kind of being in the military, and obviously throughout life. But, you know, the military puts you through some really unique situations that in basic training. So you can always reminisce with your battle buddies about that.
We asked the same question of Sean Doherty, and I want to ask it of you. Did you keep your athlete-ness a secret during basic training and then have a little fun at marksman training?
I tried, but somebody from Vermont called down there and let my commander know. And so I was just like not telling anybody. I was just like, people are like, what do you do? And I was like, sports, whatever. People can make up whatever they want. Like, what do I do? I don't know what I do. Um, and I was trying to think of like a cool backstory so that people wouldn't know. And so that I didn't have to like go out and win the PT test the first day. But we're all standing in line at reception and they're calling off all our names. Like, you're now in, gosh, I can't even remember what company I was in, like Echo something, they're like, you're an Echo company. I'm like, okay. And this commander comes walking by and he just goes, Irwin. And I'm like, present, trying to just be like, here. And he just goes, you're the Olympian, right? And I went, no, not yet, sir. Because obviously that was like 3 years before I actually made the Olympics. And I'm just like, not yet, sir, but I want to be. And so he just is like, okay. And he walks away and I'm like, oh, maybe that's the last I'll hear of it. Maybe no one else heard, I don't want all these other girls, like thinking of me like this certain way. First PT test they throw us in, I'm like jogging the mile because I know I can just like jog it and hit the standard. And I got these drill sergeants yelling for me. They're like, we heard you were good at this. And I was just like, no. And so me thinking I could just like jog my way through PT, all of a sudden I'm getting yelled at by all these drill sergeants. They're like, you better beat these boys. And they're just yelling at me. And all of a sudden, like, I'm just starting, okay, fine. So I start like tracking the boys down one by one. And one guy is the only guy that ended up beating me. The whole time we were there, he's a faster runner than me. But it was hilarious. The entire time there ended up being bets, like what standard I was going to hit, how fast I could run the 2 mile. It was really fun. And little did I know eventually, like being good at PT was how I was going to be able to get like phone time, because they don't let you use your phones at basic training. At least not when I went. I got my phone 4 times and 3 of the times was because I won the PT test. And so I definitely was just like, they were like, the first thing they put on, whoever wins the PT test will get 30 minutes on their phones. They can call their mom or significant other. And I was just like, done. Cranking through push-ups, sit-ups, running the 2 mile as fast as I could. So it was a unique experience, like I said. So I sadly did not get to keep it as much of a secret as Sean did. And also I think like on the men's side, there's a lot of men who go into basic training in the military who like want to be the top athletic soldier. And not that there's not a lot of women who do that, but I think a lot of women don't go in to like be like running the fastest, doing 70 push-ups and whatever, that I was doing. And so I definitely stood out as a female at basic training of just being able to do very similar to what the men were able to do.
When we were talking about like being resilient and taking things one step at a time, one race at a time, trying to make it blocky, and I don't know how to phrase this very well, but when you start thinking in a very short spans of time, is that then harder to see the big picture and then also life beyond biathlon? Because you're fortunate to have the Army and you have a career and you've built a career that will continue on. And you've got this other side that kind of helps see big picture. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think a good way to help me explain this is talking about how many times I almost retired before I found biathlon. I mean, I think I grew up a runner, I wanted to be an Olympic track star. And so I really wanted to be a good runner. And the more I got hit with, injuries and failure and that, the more I gravitated towards Nordic skiing, which I was introduced to at, 16 years old, which is much later than everybody I'm racing against. And so I think for me, running was kind of a way to get into college and get my college paid for. Because otherwise, like, I was a decent student, but, I was like, I wanted scholarships. I wanted to go to college for athletics. And so I think for me, it was always big pictures, like get into college. So then when I got into college and I got to college, it definitely was like, when I'm done with college, I'm done competing. And so I think I kind of always had that, even going into my last year of college, I had that where when I'm done, I'm done. and I think I just sort of got this glimpse of this life beyond being a professional athlete when I made U23 Worlds in 2015. And I was like, well, maybe I can try professional skiing. And so then my perspective was able to shift, and I was able to kind of see a life beyond that. And I think as, the financial burden of racing on that circuit kind of came to, you start getting to that point where I can go day by day and I can love training, but like big picture, I couldn't see it anymore. I couldn't see what Nordic skiing was going to bring me and what this lifestyle was going to bring me. And so when I told people, I was like, I have to move on. I have to find something else. Like, I love this, but I can't do it. And so then Joanne introduced me to biathlon. And so I was like, okay, well, they're willing to at least give me a place to live for 6 months and give me a purpose for 6 months. And so for me, it was really easy to decide and see the big picture of those 6 months of like, I'm going to have fun and I'm going to do biathlon and I'm still going to move on with my life, but I'm going to do this. And it's just crazy how it's kind of morphed. And, of me like kind of ignoring the big picture and putting it off to the side and just focusing on that little small picture in front of me, like the next 6 months, it eventually led to finding the military and finding, the Vermont National Guard and finding the Army. Because all of a sudden then they were like, well, if you sign this 6-year contract, they laid it out for me super well. You'll get benefits, we'll pay off your school, you'll get some money, and you'll get to do biathlon. And then for me, I was like, this is a hard decision, but at the same time, this gives me something big for 6 years. This is a 6-year thing. And like, if I do well, like I can make the Olympics. And if I don't, I can go to drill once a month and get a paycheck, and I can have a place to live. And I think that's where the U.S. Army, for me, it gave me, like you said, it gave me this big picture, and it gave me this security of like not feeling like I was in a rush anymore. I was like, I'll sign this 6-year contract. I know I'm going to be in Vermont. I know I'm going to want to do biathlon, and I really love doing biathlon. And I think I can get good at this. And it taking that kind of, I think, pressure away from me of like, what's the next thing in my life, helped me excel in biathlon so much more. And so I think, moving to the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program has given me another perspective of, the active duty side of, where I can go beyond this too. So I haven't qualified for the Olympics yet, and I really hope I do. But it's kind of interesting of going into this Olympic cycle. I definitely feel a lot more secure about my big picture of if I don't achieve this goal, it's not the end of my career as either a biathlete or as a soldier. It's just a step. And so I think, having been through so much of that up and down in my life has made me really appreciate the security that I do have now, the security that I have found with the U.S. Army and with this program and with biathlon. And so anything at this point, it's a little easier to get through. I was having a really hard time last week because they didn't select me to race in the sprint. And I really wanted to race in the sprint, but, they really wanted to race the team that they raced. And it hurt to not get picked, but we only have 3 start spots this year. So this is what we're dealing with this season. And I think at one point in my stress and anxiety and all the emotions I was feeling and throwing at myself at once, I finally just was like, I got off the phone with my fiance and I was like, this isn't life or death. Why don't I just have fun, and just be able to go through all those emotions, feel everything, feel upset, feel disappointed, feel sad, feel everything, but then also know this is a fun part of my life. I'm going to look back at this in 20 years and I'm going to be like, holy crap. I was an Olympic biathlete competing on the World Cup, living the dream, and so in the moment, it all feels so hard and so tough. And going to the Olympics feels like so much pressure and we want to perform. We want to do all this stuff. But I think if anything, what I've learned over the past 8 years in biathlon and 7 years now in the military is that having this bigger, broader perspective of what my life is and what it can be, being a biathlete is such a small part of it.
Well, Deedra, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us and chatting biathlon.
Yeah, I feel like I talk all day to you guys. Thank you so much. It was such a fun podcast. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sean and Deedra, and thank you also to the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program for connecting us.
And most importantly, since we spoke to them, both have been officially named to the Olympic team.
Yes.
So we will definitely see them in Italy
Well, we won't see them
We
in
won't
Italy,
see
probably.
them. You at home will see them, and we'll see them on the television because we can't get there from here, but they will be there, which is the most important element.
Exactly. You know what else is important about getting there?
Our fundraiser.
Yes.
We are coming to the last stretch. So we are doing a fundraiser to make sure that Jill and I get to Italy and get home from Italy, because that's the second half of this, and that we're able to bring you 32 daily shows. It's not cheap, it's not free, but we want to do this and we love doing it. And I think the listeners love what we bring them. So to do this, we've got the fundraiser. If you go to our website, flamealivepod.com, you'll find the little pop-up menu. And if you want a thank you gift, we only will guarantee a thank you gift if you donate by Friday, January 16th. So that is this week. And the thank you gifts are pretty cool. We've got postcards, we've got mascots. So take a look, have some fun with us, and get us home, because we can get there so far with what we have, may not be able to get home.
And thank you for everybody who's donated so far. We have made a huge dent in our fundraising goals, and we just need to get over the finish line. So please give us a hand. And you can find the fundraising page. We'll have a link in the show notes, of course. It's also, if you go to flamealivepod.com, you'll see a pop-up and a banner at the top to take you right there.
Hockey non pronto.
Hockey is not ready. It's ready enough.
It's pronto-ish. Is that an Italian phrase?
So we finally had the ice hockey test event at the brand new Santagiulia hockey venue in Milano. Now we have an idea of what the stadium is like. And according to journalist Brian Pinelli, who covered the event for the Hockey News and wrote several articles about it, we'll throw some links in the show notes. The powers that be in the International Ice Hockey Federation and the IOC are very optimistic about the venue. And they believe that the ice hockey tournament will be successful, even though there's still plenty of work to be done. So the ice master for the Olympics is Colorado Avalanche ice master Don Moffitt. This is his 6th Olympics. He's no stranger to last-minute preparations. They're working on putting some ice. The players at the event were pretty satisfied with it. They said it was pretty consistent all the way through. It was a little thin. Goalkeeper said that you got a little hollow sound out of the ice, which was a little strange, but they also had some holes that they had to repair mid-game, but it's pretty good so far. Not perfect, but satisfactory.
You know, I would think the hollow sound would definitely be disturbing to the goalie if you ever use sound as part of your defense. You know, probably the sound of it really makes a difference to the goalie more than anybody else.
Right.
But as they lay more and more ice, that should get better.
Yes. Christophe Duby, the IOC executive director, said that he expects, quote, a number of areas where painting might not be fully dry, but nothing that would prevent anyone to work or enjoy the experience. And
well, that only becomes a problem if I lean against the wall in my new flannel-lined pants. And the paint is not dry. Christophe, are you going to buy me a new pair of flannel-lined pants? Or I'm just going to have to walk around with paint on my booty?
Right? Because that could prevent you from enjoying the experience. It could prevent you from working, too.
Exactly.
Brian Pinelli reported that the dressing rooms were, quote, a work in progress, with 8 of 14 completed so far, and concession stands were non-existent, as we predicted last week. In one of his articles, he had a picture of the sandwich bar, which just, you see sandwich bar and you see a bar, and there's no sandwiches.
No panini.
The Milano Cortina organizing committee announced another opening ceremony performer, to no one's surprise and to much excitement, I would say. Andrea Bocelli.
You had to.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, this is, how could you have an Italian ceremony without Andrea Bocelli? That is just like having Italian food with no pizza.
Well, yes. And he's performed at the Torino 2006 closing ceremony, so he is no stranger to Olympic ceremonies. And this will be exciting and beautiful, I will say. You know, he's got an amazing voice, and this will be honestly one of those I can already see them clipping it within 30 seconds of it happening and getting that sucker isolated and on socials.
Everywhere we will see him.
If you were excited about the Marathon Port 2 at Paris 2024, get excited again. There's going to be a 10K fun run in Milano. This will be the new Shapers run sponsored by Salomon. It will take place on Saturday, February 21st, which is the day before the closing ceremony at 9:30 a.m. at Via Legnano, with a race expo on Thursday and Friday, the 18th and 19th. The field is limited to 10,000 runners, costs 40 euros until January 31st, 50 euros after that until it's full. The fee includes a race bib, event t-shirt, goodie bag, post-race refreshments, and a finisher's medal. We will have a link to registration in the show notes.
And I hope it includes maybe some mittens, because it may be a little chill for a fun run.
But the shirt was really cool looking.
Oh.
It has Milano Cortina 26 on it. It's very cool. It's tempting to run. I haven't run a 10K in forever, so that would be a negative for me.
Well, you could just walk fast.
I could probably walk fast by then.
You do 100 miles on the bicycle. How much harder could a 10K be?
Biking and running are two different things,
I
man.
know.
But I don't know. The temptation is there. The schedule may not allow it.
It's not like me trying to do a 10K. That would be
You walk fast.
That would be
Very
disastrous.
So if you do sign up, let us know, because we want to hear all about it. LA 2028 news. Ticket registration is open. How the ticket processing works: you register at tickets.la28.org. That will be putting you into the lottery for time slots for purchasing tickets. Did that sound complicated?
It did, but it is.
Okay. So basically what you do, you register, your email goes into a virtual hat, and you get, as they come up with time slots for purchasing tickets, because tickets get purchased on a schedule. They don't just release them all at like 10 in the morning on a Saturday, and you go down to your local Ticketmaster outlet to buy them in person. Do you remember those days?
Where you'd go to Sam Goody?
Yeah, right. Because they'd have the Ticketmaster desk. So anyway, now tickets are all online, and they'll draw your name and give you a time buying slot. And that's just all random. Once you register, you will be in for all ticket drops throughout the ticket selling process. You register now through March 18th. Time slots to purchase during drop 1 will run from April 9 to April 19th. So sign up by March 18th. By April 9 to April 19th, you'll find out what your time buying slot is for the first ticket drop. You will be notified by email March 31st to April 7th if you've been assigned a slot. There will be rolling ticket drops starting in April. This will be just for Olympic tickets, because Paralympic tickets go on sale in 2027. The maximum number of tickets you can buy per person is 12. So if you don't buy your full allotment in your first time slot, you go into subsequent ticket draws. So you can choose to spend it all now or save it over time and see what else comes down the line. Drop 1 will include opening and closing ceremony tickets. Tickets start at $28. Details on ticket pricing for all categories will be available when Drop 1 opens in April. If you live locally to the LA area or to Oklahoma City, there will be a pre-sale for you. That will be April 2 to April 6. So your drop ends before the Drop 1 begins on April 9th. You will have to have a zip code in the following counties: Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, Ventura, San Bernardino, Oklahoma, Canadian, and Cleveland. If you live in those counties, you can be in this pre-sale drop.
Nice little bonus for the locals, as it should be. Speaking of tickets, we didn't say this in Milano Cortina, but Ken Hanscom, our good friend, mentioned on LinkedIn how Milano Cortina is dropping tickets still every week, that we're going to be seeing new tickets from now until opening ceremony. So if you want to do a last minute trip and maybe run that 10K, tickets are there.
Tickets are there. I think hotels have been opening up, especially in Milano. And the hard thing is if you wanted to see sports in multiple regions, in multiple venue clusters, that's going to be difficult because the Facebook groups are full of conversations about how do I get there?
Right. But if you want to go to one spot, get some tickets, check out some things, you can do it last minute, which we've said all along. So we're kind of at the two ends of the ticketing. LA is for the people who love to plan this all out and know exactly what they're doing 2 years in advance. And Milan right now is for all those last minute fun people who are just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and as Ken always likes to say, it's a marathon, not a sprint for ticket buying. And LA is going to be a huge ticket draw, but you are purchasing tickets 2 years plus in advance of an event. And we found this out with Milano. We found this out with Paris. People buy tickets and then their plans change, their lives change, and they can't go anymore. So if you don't get it right away, keep trying. Something will come up.
Welcome to Shukflastan.
It is the time of the show where we check in with our team, Keep the Flame Alive. These are past guests and listeners of the show who make up the citizenship of our very own country, Shukflastan. U.S. Figure Skating Nationals happened.
And Amber Glenn won her third consecutive U.S. Figure Skating Championship and was named to her first Olympic team. Spencer Howe and Emily Chan finished fourth in pairs and were also named to their first Olympic team. Jason Brown finished eighth in the men's competition and was named as first alternate. Amber and Jason were also named to the U.S. team competing at World Championships, with Spencer Howe and Emily Cham as second alternate for that World Championship team. Jason will also be competing at the 2026 Four Continents Championships.
It was an amazing figure skating competition.
What a beautiful, beautiful women's final. If you have not watched that women's final, please go back. And I will say this. I will try very hard to get that high demand women's final ticket at the Olympics because, man, is that women's final going to be a blockbuster.
It is. That was the best competition out of all four disciplines for the U.S. All the top three women who are going all competed fantastically. So beautiful. Everybody's got their own style. It's all beautiful. That's going to be exciting going up against a formidable number of other skaters, particularly those from Japan. Spencer and Emily had a really difficult short program, finished eighth, and managed to work their way up to the fourth slot.
With a gorgeous long program and got themselves on an Olympic team. So, man, this is so much fun having skaters on Shukflastan.
Bobsled and Skeleton World Cup Tour had races in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Bree Walker won gold in monobob and 16th in the two-woman. Ilana Myers-Taylor took 9th in the monobob and 10th in the two-woman. In the four-man, Frank Del Duca and Josh Williamson got 16th, and in the two-man, they took 7th. Also, the Bobsled and Skeleton North American Cup stop was at Lake Placid this weekend, where athletes had two races for most events. Adam Edelman drove the Israeli two-man team to 10th place and the four-man to 5th and 6th place. In the women's skeleton, Shannon Galea took 16th and 18th. And this is huge. Deutsche Welle is reporting that there are allegations of cheating in the women's races in the North American Cup that may affect Shannon Galea's ability to qualify for the Olympics. Jonathan Crane reported for DW.com that a Canadian coach has been accused of manipulating the event, where 4 of the 6 Canadian entrants dropped out at the last minute. This reduced the number of competitors to fewer than 21 and therefore reduced the number of qualifying points that athletes could earn in this race in an attempt to ensure that Canadian racer Jane Channel, who's on the World Cup circuit, would qualify for the Olympics. Shannon got affected by the number of points she earned. If you're a skeleton fan, it also affected American Katie Eulander, who at age 41 is trying to make her 6th Olympics. We will be following this.
On a happier note, luge was back in Winterberg with Siobhan Forgan and Sophia Kirkby taking 5th. More importantly, Forgan and Kirkby were officially named to the U.S. Olympic team, as was singles luger Ashley Farquharson.
Yeah, go, 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 go.
The fencing season has started up again at the World Cup in Hong Kong. Lee Kiefer won women's foil. She and Lauren Scruggs were part of the bronze medal winning team. In the team event, Alex Macialis won men's foil in Paris. He, Nick Itkin, and Garrick Meinhardt were part of the silver medal winning team at that event. And also Miles Chomley Watson has co-founded the World Fencing League, a pro circuit that will debut in LA this April. And you can join the waitlist for tickets at worldfencingleague.org.
In women's individual Nordic combined action at Otepää, Estonia, Annika Malasinski took 18th in the mass start normal hill, 14th in the Gunderson normal hill, and 10th in the compact normal hill.
Keegan Randall will be part of the NBC cross-country commentary team as an analyst and will be based out of Stamford, Connecticut.
Author Doug Levy has started his own podcast called Under the Radar, Olympic Athletes You Gotta Meet. We'll have a link to that in the show notes, or you can find it in your podcast app.
And 4 months after tearing his hamstring off the bone, which I did not even know about, that how serious it was, race walker Evan Dunphy is back on the track and training again. So glad to hear that Evan is recovering well.
And that will do it for our part of this episode. After our sign-off, Shuk Flastani Sean Colahan is going to tell us about his experiences shooting Olympic-related cultural stories for NBC Boston and other NBC affiliates. Those started airing in October and have been spread out across from then until the games. So you can look for them on your local NBC station. We decided to piece together this interview a little differently than our others, so we're curious to know what you think of it and whether we should do that type of production again in the future.
Also, please do not forget to support our fundraiser and help the show provide you better coverage from Milano Cortina. Most importantly, I need a mascot. Jill has one, so I'm really jealous. So get on that, peoples.
Combine funds if you need to. So thank you so much for listening.
And until next time, keep the flame alive.
Milan is my first time in Milan, a really cool city. I do say I definitely want to go back. I've never been to Rome, but it just felt more intimate. So maybe like the Boston to New York in terms of size of Milan is a lot bigger than Boston. Really great public transit. And it looks like all the venues in Milan are right on subway lines. So I think getting around will be relatively easy. We actually went and we had a tour at San Siro Stadium where the opening ceremony was going to be. We did not go into any of the other venues at all. Besides that, went to the Opera House, the Teatro alla Scala. We went to the Duomo. We went to a bar called Bar Basso, where the Negroni Spegliano was invented. Really cool bar if you can get out there. I mean, it's in Milan, but great time. Did a cooking segment with a chef. Made a risotto Milanese. Did a coffee piece. Did some other sites around the city. So San Siro was a cool stadium. I think they said it's about 70,000, kind of your big sports team stadium. So we'll, I think, have plenty of opportunity for the opening ceremony. And it said there's a subway exit right on the other side of the parking lot. So the one nice thing is you'll be able to get food late at night. When we were over there, we were filming and just working continuously through the day that we really were not stopping to eat until like 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night. And there was everything was open. Other people were eating. So definitely ability to get late bites will be, and your caffeine fix will be very easily handled, as you can literally get espresso anywhere you go, but just don't order a cappuccino after breakfast. Well, we did Verona and day trip. So we took the nice high-speed line out to Verona in the morning, shot 4 stories in Verona, and then we went to the arena where they're going to be doing the closing ceremonies, and that is going to be incredible. Think of the Colosseum in Rome. That's what this arena is going to be like. They do operas there all summer, and it's going to be the site of the closing ceremonies, and also both the opening and closing for the Paralympic Games. So that's going to be pretty incredible in terms of what the production designer decides to do with that. It's an ancient Roman arena that is still in use. So it's not like a specialty use for the Olympics. I said it's used all summer. There was an opera they do many different operas. They were resetting the stage for a different one the day we were there filming. So it's stone steps. So like on the outside, it's the stone that is used to build that you sit on. The arena floor, they have like a floor seating like you would see in any sort of like big theater. Slightly sloped down from the back to it's an oval shape, so slightly from the long way down, but those were typical normal seats you might see at like a theater. I would say bring your seat cushion. It's sitting on the stone. Bundle up. So we did a piece. There's the movie Letters to Juliet. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a club that takes. First, for those of you who don't know, there's a statue of Juliet in Verona that a lot of people, very many people, like to take pictures with. And then there's also the Juliet's balcony that people can wait to go and get their picture taken. But people would leave letters, love letters, and kind of like ask for help type letters to Juliet. And as a volunteer club in Verona that will take people from around the world can come and volunteer, and you come in and people will write letters back to these people in the voice of Juliet or Juliet's secretary. And so we went and interviewed a volunteer who runs the club, and we also talked to a few people who were there responding to letters, which was fascinating to kind of hear what people had wrote them and what they were responding to. Another thing we did there is we met with an archaeologist who took us down below the buildings to Roman ruins that were below the city that were excavated and preserved. So got to see part of an old Roman road and the forum of a part of Verona from its dating back to the Roman era. Verona's definitely a small, intimate. I mean, I don't want to say city because there's no big buildings in it, but definitely small. It's not a huge city. It's a very, very large town, I guess I could say. Milan is I think a city. I mean, 1.5 million for the city, big metro area. Livigno was a super cool little mountain town, and that's exactly what it is. It's a very narrow strip in the valley. Basically, two roads go up and down the valley, and small little side streets off of it. I would say a lot of historic and older chateaus, but there was a lot of modern construction, but keeping kind of in the style of your Alps chateau look you might picture. Just driving into town at like the rotary, kind of as you got into town, they had a Livigno, site of Milano Cortina, 2026. They had an Olympic rings on like a little ridge line there. We're talking about it. A lot of towns have little banners on their light poles going down the main road, and there was Milano Cortina logos on that along with the town logo and things. So, but definitely a lot of activity. There's two ski areas on either side of the valley. And so on the one side is going to be the aerials and the moguls freestyle. And the other side where like the half pipe and the ski snowboard cross and the snowboard, there was a lot of mountain modifications going on. A lot of dust and equipment up on the slopes. I don't think you'd walk between them. It's a little bit further, so there'll probably be shuttles, but from what the town people is telling us, the town's going to be closed off unless you have a hotel reservation, have credentials, or have tickets to an event. You won't be able to get into the town. Well, we did a cool story up at the top of the mountain, one of the mountains. There's a winery from just outside Livigno, down on the way to Como in Valtellina, that is making a special wine, Sforzato, I think is what, out of Nebbiolo grapes. They're aging it at the top of the mountain. So it's cooler up there, and also there's less oxygen. So they've been aging it it'll be 10 years by the time it comes in. It's a special Olympic branded wine. I don't know how much those bottles are going to be going for, but that was a cool thing. But I just say any town you could get up to, I'm sure is just going to be amazing. We picked this one just because it worked out logistically for us for our trip. But I think any mountain town to see anything will be nice. I mean, Milan's really cool because the center of the city is the Duomo Cathedral, which it might be a religious space, but the city really kind of looks onto that as like the center of their city, more so in the broader sense than a Catholic cathedral, which is kind of a cool thing because I said that is smack dab in the middle of Milan, and kind of everything almost radiates out from that. Definitely being Milan, hopefully take some time to check out some of the culture of it. I mean, it's going to be right there in the city. I said it was tough tough because Pyeongchang was such a different vibe than Paris. Paris was in a big city, so I think you could easily get out of the bubble if you wanted to. It's a little bit harder in Pyeongchang to do that. But yeah, just check out the food. Definitely get the wine. And the food is fantastic, by the way. The food was fantastic.